pain in the ass. He was my pain in the ass. From the time he was born, he was not easy. Kelson is either all in or all out with anything. There's no compromise, ever. Because Kelson does what Kelson wants to do. His teachers would tell you he was a pain in the ass, too. I'll give you a short little story of what I mean about Kelson being a pain in the ass. So Kelson was extremely intelligent. He was doing college algebra in 4th grade. Super, super intelligent. And his 5th grade teacher was a male teacher named Mr. Vance. I still remember his name. Big, burly guy, wore overalls, looked like Paul Bunyan. And I thought, oh, maybe Kelson will behave this year. Well, we go to the first parent-teacher conference. And the teacher was just like, he didn't know how to say it. And I go, just say it. Like, I knew it was coming. He's a pain in the ass. And I'm like, he is a pain in the ass. And the example he gave was everybody was working on some English project. And Kelson kept bugging him, I want to go to the library. Bugging. He goes, so I gave in and I said, fine, go to the library. He said, I went to the library 20 minutes later thinking he's going to be goofing off. And he's got all these books open on a table. So the teacher said, you'd be back in the classroom in 20 minutes. Kelson wrote a 5-page report, on the weight of the planets and how that affects their orbit, because that's what Kelson wanted to do. He's a pain in the ass. He's my pain in the ass, but yeah. If he wasn't challenged or not interested, he wasn't doing it. Homework, that was another one. And I had a hard time arguing with him about homework. And we're going like 3rd grade arguing. I said, Kelson, we have to do your homework. I don't want to do the homework. And his story was, Mom, I do schoolwork all day. Why do I have to do it when I come home? Right? It does seem a little reasonable. And I would say, well, Kelson, they want to see if you remember. Well, they can ask me tomorrow if I remember. It was kind of hard to get him to do homework, but yeah, it is kind of reasonable. Oh my gosh. Kelson was hilarious. He was very funny. He was very quick-witted. From very, very little, he was very quick. He'll comment on anything, and it's funny. Even when I don't want to laugh, he'd make me laugh. He could piss me off quicker than anybody else, but he could make me laugh just as fast. He'd be like, you know you want to laugh, Mom. Come on, I know you're going to laugh. I mean, it's just, yeah. Around the teenage years, I want to say like 14, he was diagnosed with being bipolar. So he went through probably a year and a half of trying to find medication, which that's a whole nother kettle of fish. And that's when I started noticing Kelson would self-medicate, I guess. I know in high school, like drinking and smoking pot, a lot of kids did that, but I thought he did it, what I knew, he was doing it to self-medicate. Because he wasn't taking any antidepressants or mood stabilizers. And he didn't have a lot of mood swings. And like when he did, like when he had depression, oh, it was awful. Awful. He was an absolute misery to be around. I would tell him, Kelson, go to bed. Fine. Usually he was very upbeat, but... And again, it's all or none with Kelson. It's high or low. Yeah, he's pretty bored. He went to community college for a little while, and he liked that because he got to pick what classes he was going to take. And then he had a back surgery. Not a major back surgery, but he had a back surgery, and that's when everything changed. After I think it was like the 3rd refill on the pain medication, I remember saying to Kelson, you don't need that. You don't need any more pain medicine. Oh, but this still hurts. I'm like, it shouldn't hurt anymore, Kelson. And it still took me after that, and it took me catching him stealing my medicine, and that kid broke into every lockbox and safe I've ever had, except for the last one, but because it needs my fingerprint. Yeah, it probably still took me about a year and a half to realize that he had a problem. When things become pretty evident that he had a problem. That's when we got him to go to treatment and inpatient treatment for the first time, and that was pretty good. And he did really good for a while after getting out of treatment. And then I don't know why. Well, I don't know any reason why he would have relapses. But each relapse, his addiction was worse. His situations were worse. And then he had a brilliant idea that he was going to sell drugs so he could support his habit and support himself. So Kelson bought, I think there was 5 different drugs, and he had them in a backpack. And the day after he bought them, he got pulled over by many police officers. Many police officers. And Kelson was arrested, and he was charged with 5 felonies and a weapons charge. And Kelson took a plea agreement. He'd never been in trouble before, and he went to prison for 3.5 years. He stayed off drugs while he was in prison, yeah. Yeah, he was able to work outside the prison 6 days a week, which he loved. He worked at the Humane Society for 2 years, and then he worked at Karchner Caverns, which is a state park, for 1.5 years. Yeah, and I'd go see him every week. And he loved Karchner Caverns because Kelson loved the outdoors. And they let the inmates, I think there was like 10 people on the crew there, and they let them plant a garden and grow their own fruits and vegetables, because you don't get fresh fruits and vegetables in prison. So that he really loved. When he got out, he did amazing. He got a really decent job that he loved. He lived at home with me. He was saving money to get his own place. You know, he wasn't hanging around with people that he was using with. I mean, he was on the up and up, and he was doing amazing. And I thought, oh, maybe prison is what he needed. But that wasn't the case. He was off parole maybe a week, and he used. It was really, really rough. And I really did my best to work him over to get him to go to treatment, but it was constant fighting. We were constantly fighting. Eventually, he agreed to go to detox and to go to treatment. So we did that. And he did good for a while again. And then he relapsed. There's never a reason why. You could never give me a reason why. I don't know if it's one thing that led to another thing, like he'd go have drinks with friends and he'd just kind of go down that alley, but yeah, but each time it was worse. And it is a roller coaster, being sober and living a good life to turning to crime to support your habit and lying and manipulating. And then my boys live in the house that they grew up in. Kelson didn't live there anymore because my son Sean kicked him out because he was using. But Kelson had keys to the house. So he broke in the house and he stole money and he stole property. So I had him arrested. And the day he was arrested, the neighbors called me and said, Tara, Kelson's on the roof. So I just hung up from the detective, actually, and I just called him right back. And I live on the next street, so I was there in like 45 seconds. And what Kelson did was he got up on the roof, removed the vent to the attic, crawled through the attic, and dropped down into the house. And then, so he was released with no bail on your own recognizance. And he met a couple while they're sitting in jail waiting to be released. And Kelson got released at the same time as the girlfriend got released. And I guess they decided that they were going to go to someone's house that they thought had heroin in their house and break into their house. So Kelson was arrested 2 hours after he was released. And then he stayed in jail for quite a while. He was on no bond. And ultimately, he went to prison for 2.5 years. And then the day he got out, I think he was home 1 or 2 days before, oh, I'm going to go out with friends. And that's the last time I saw him for quite a few months because he was using again. And Kelson would ghost me if he's using. He doesn't want anything to do with me at all. I'm not going to pop his drug bubble. But I would hunt him down. I have knocked on doors I had no business knocking on. And I was pretty good at hunting him down. But after that relapse, I didn't want to hunt him down anymore. I was pissed. He was living in a halfway house. He was still on parole. And then he kept saying he had a new job, that he was working midnight shift. So I didn't hear from him often because he said, well, Mom, when you're awake, I'm sleeping. Well, what turned out is Kelson was using. And the next thing I know, the parole officer calls me and asks me if I know where Kelson is. And I said, no, you should know where Kelson is. And they said, well, he hasn't been to work in, I don't remember how long it was, like 3 or 4 weeks maybe. And I said, well, he's at the halfway house. She goes, oh, he hasn't been there for like 6 weeks. So I used to track Kelson's phone because I pay for the phone. And he ended up in Utah. But I don't know who he knows in Utah. I have no idea. I have no idea how he ended up there. And it probably took about 6 weeks for him to have interaction with law enforcement. He didn't get arrested, but he's flagged because now he's absconded on parole. So he was arrested and brought back to Arizona, and he had to finish his sentence, which was 3 months. Total waste of time. And so he got out at the very end of August 2022. The day that we got home, he was home maybe a couple hours, and he was supposed to get the Vivitrol shot the next day. And Kelson goes, Mom, me and my friends are getting a hotel for the night, but I'll be back in the morning. And I said, no, you won't. You need to stay. You're getting that Vivitrol shot. And you have to be, your system has to be completely clean to have that shot. So that was the last time I saw Kelson. The next thing I knew, he was in Mexico, which is not far from our house. It's like 40 minutes. It's not very far. And then the next thing I heard, he was trying to buy drugs in Mexico and got left for, I don't know what, in the middle of nowhere in the desert. Yeah. And then ended up back in Tucson. And then during this time, when I'm trying to get a hold of him and trying to find him, my mother-in-law went into heart failure. So me and my husband were traveling back and forth to Georgia. And then we were in Georgia for a few weeks. On her last few weeks, we took care of her. So she died November 30th. We came back home, I want to say it was the second week in December, first week in December. And then we went back January for her funeral. And Kelson died April 5th, 4 months after she did. And those months between her death, those 4 months between her death and Kelson's death, I didn't know until after he died that that was my opportunity to save him. I didn't know that he became homeless for like 2 or 3 months. I had no idea. The police had to tell me that. So that was my chance. That was my chance, and I blew it. It's hard. It's real hard. You know, I didn't give up, but I was fed up. And I was tired. Very tired. Every time I would start looking for him, I would just get so pissed at myself. Like, what are you doing? driving around Tucson in a grid looking for him, and contacting people and being that pain in the ass mom. But when my mother-in-law got sick, I just didn't bother looking for Kelson. It's a roller coaster. It's treatment and detox and jails and courts and judges and lawyers and prisons, and it's a lot. And it's frustrating and it's heartbreaking to see your child. He just can't. Like, he was the most amazing person. He was an amazing human being. But they had that one thing, and it killed him. And he didn't deserve to lose his life. He didn't deserve to die alone, sleeping in a U-Haul truck.
How did you find out that he died?
The police came to my house. I kind of knew it was coming, to be honest with you. Something was coming. Me and Kelson had a weird sixth sense about each other. And on the Sunday before he died, I just had a really, really bad feeling. I couldn't sleep. And I texted my older son and I said, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, what are you doing up at 12:30 on a Sunday? I go to bed at 10. And I just have a bad feeling. I just can't shake it. The next day, same thing. And I'd cry for no reason. And so that was on Monday. On Tuesday, I still had that feeling. And I reached out to Kelson on Facebook and I said, Kelson, please meet with me. And he was dead 12 hours later. The police were at my door. And I asked them, how did they find me? How did they know I was Kelson's mom? And they said, oh, it's an old police report. I said, how do you know it was Kelson? And they said, we fingerprinted him. So.
Was there any kind of investigation?
Not much. Not much. It was pretty poor, piss poor. And I think I didn't really push it. There's a lot. It's a lot to deal with the loss of your child. There's a lot going on, and I'm learning things that I didn't know, and they just said, oh, he used Snapchat. They tried to find who the dealers were. I said, I don't know what that means. So that got explained to me, and now you buy drugs on the internet and they get delivered, and I didn't know a fentanyl pill cost $1. I had no idea. $1. As far as Kelson's death, I'm still processing that. I have not fully processed that he's gone. Like, my brain just goes to, oh, he's off doing what he's doing. And I'm going about my days. And then I'll think, oh, I got to tell Kelson about that. And then realize that that's not reality anymore. And it feels like all those emotions that I felt being told that he was dead, they all come right back. The biggest thing that I want people to be aware of and to learn from is about addiction. I learned a lot with Kelson, a lot, and I have a lot still to learn, but we have to remove the stigma. It is a chemical change in their brains and in their bodies when they're using. And yeah, it's their choice to use, but it's not a 100% choice if you understand what happens. I think society needs to be more opening and be more educated, just like we did with mental health. Years ago, nobody talked about mental health. It was a secret, and just we don't talk about it. Well, now we talk about it every day. And I hope that's what happens with addiction. Do I want people homeless doing drugs in my neighborhood? Not necessarily. Not really. But when you see those people on the street, or you see them passed out at the bus stop, remember that that's somebody's child. I want people just to remember that. That's somebody's child. Somebody loves that person. They're not the addict or the junkie. They're somebody important. We talk about the person that died, but the number of lives that are affected by that one death is far and vast. And I don't want another mom to feel what I have felt. the guilt, the sadness, the helplessness.
Questions.
It's constant. And truthfully, like meeting other parents and other moms that have lost a child to a drug death has been life-changing. It's amazing to me, like, we're people that are walking around with black holes in our soul that's never going to be filled again. But yet we can come together and try to prevent another mom from feeling what we're feeling. You know, Kelson was mine. I grew him, I gave birth to him, I raised him, I loved him. Nobody or no one had any right to take him away from me, not even him. He was mine. And I wanted so bad to blame somebody. The person Kelson was getting the drugs from. Anybody. I wanted to blame somebody. I wanted to point my fury at somebody, and the only person I can blame is Kelson. So that's a hard one.